Welcome to the Blogger Genius Podcast, brought to you by Milo Tree. Here's your host, Jillian Leslie.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today I'm excited. My guest is Maggy Woodley from the blog Red Ted Art. Now she's been blogging since 2010 and she is also an arts educator. So welcome to the show, Maggy.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast. I've been binge listening to it recently, so it's been really, really informative. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So we met about a month ago, probably. We'd known each other online. I don't know, like I was just looking through one of my Pinterest boards, my group boards, and we're on group boards together. Yes, and then we just met in person at the AdThrive conference, and I got to sit next to you, and you were so lovely.
Oh, thank you. And ditto. It was so nice to have a long chat to you. I love the conference. It was great. And it was so lovely to meet people in person and connect. So it's brilliant.
And you flew all the way out from the UK to Austin, Texas.
Yes. And it was so worth it. Nothing beats face-to-face contact and kind of, like you say, we've known each other for a while online. And then suddenly the penny drops and you're like, oh, yes, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So
brilliant.
So thank you for being on the show. And I want to hear about your story because I am going to say it. You are a big blogger. You have a big, successful blog. So to start off, I want to hear your story. How did you get into this?
Well, I guess like many bloggers, I about 8 years ago, so 2010, so yeah, 9 years ago, I was at home with a toddler and a baby. And I kind of knew that I didn't want to go back to my day job, but I also knew that I needed to do something to keep myself busy and, your mind stimulated rather than the kids were keeping me busy, but something that belonged to me and also something that earned a little bit of money, not lots, but a little bit, so that I could contribute to the household and feel like I didn't have to go back to work or not have that pressure to go back to work. And I actually started off with selling kids pop art. That's actually where the name Red Ted Art comes from. So the blog actually came second. It was this pop art I was doing first.
Okay.
And one of these pop art pictures is actually a red teddy, and that's where the title Red Ted Art comes from. And the art was tacked on because redted.com was already taken. So that's how the name came about.
And were you selling these things on Etsy? What were you doing?
Well, anywhere. I was it was mainly through word of mouth or going to like local craft fairs, that kind of thing. And but I kind of, to be honest, I was competing with things like Ikea, bright and colourful, but there's something handmade versus Ikea selling it for £5 or $10 or whatever it is. And also there's quite a lot of pressure if you're kind of trying to sell something handmade because you want it to be really good, but by definition handmade is never going to be what you think is perfect, though for other people it might be. And I set up the blog because I was told at the time that if you wanted to sell anything, you needed an online presence. And I was building a website that actually never went live. But I was building a website, and whilst I was building that website, I decided to do the blog because it was quick and easy. So it was a really quick way to go online. And as part of that, I thought, well, I can't just talk about here's another painting, here's another picture, here's another drawing. It's really boring. There's a sales mantra that I'm sure everyone's familiar with, which is in order to sell something, you have to give something away for free. So give them something for free, and then in return try and sell to them. So I thought, I'll just do little craft posts because that's fun. And it gives me something to do with the children, and it's easy, and I enjoy it, and I've always loved crafts. So I kind of created my first 2-3 craft posts, and then I went, actually, this is much more fun than doing pop art paintings, where it's quite stressful, and you're trying to sell, and you need to get it perfect, and that kind of thing. And I kind of very quickly saw that actually the blog was more fun and less pressure. It involved my children because obviously I was working with them at the time. I enjoyed. It was something when I was a child, I used to love crafting, and as a young person, I was crafted, and as a young adult, I crafted as well. And I kind of found my way back to a passion of mine, without even realizing that that's where I was going to go with it. And then also very quickly saw actually, my hits are slowly going up. This could be something. And that's basically how the concept of the blog was born. Well, it's probably a good 6 months or maybe 3 months into blogging that I realized, oh, I like blogging, not I want to, so I didn't go into blogging thinking I want to blog to make money. I kind of went into blogging as a sort of a bridge to a website. And then I never launched the website because it was rubbish and I didn't want to sell the pop art anymore. I just stuck with the blog and haven't looked back since.
Wow. I love how, again, you went in one direction and discovered a whole passion that you didn't even, it was kind of sleeping.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it was just amazing and perfect. And I, whenever people ask me now, oh, how do I start off and how do I do this, how do I do that? I always say, you know what, just start, because you don't know where it's going to take you. And in the early days of blogging, I did do like a lot of other parenting bloggers. I did have some book reviews and some days out, and it was always mainly crafts, but I kind of experimented with other things, but I always came back to crafts, and that was very clearly my strength and my passion. And I think those people who are trying to start out, it's just start, because you'll quickly find what you like and you'll quickly enjoy what does that make sense? It's without trying, you're not going to find that path.
Absolutely.
And I'm so grateful that I tried and that I found this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it is all about discovery, and it is all about putting it out there and then seeing how you respond to it and how other people respond to it.
Exactly. And there's no shame in starting something and changing direction. It's just, I think, especially in the early days, you have to give yourself some time to experiment. Maybe for 6 months you experiment. And then after that, I do think you have to start knuckling down, though, and going for it. Because I've seen some very talented people over the years starting blogs and then rebranding 2 years later. And that's quite difficult, because you're almost always starting afresh. So I do think once you get going, it's good to stick with it.
Okay, so now that you have been at it and you've grown this big business, how similar is it today? Like how often are you creating crafts, and how do you stay motivated?
Yeah, well, it has changed significantly. So in the early days, it was about my children and it was about me. And obviously my children featured in it a lot. Then they started school. And they came home from school and they were tired and they didn't want to craft and they didn't want to make. So I'd wait for them, and then I'd wait for the weekend, and then they still didn't feel like it. And then suddenly I was like, oh no, but I need that next blog post. What's going on? So it was for me, there was a transition period between, from having always had my kids in it and it being about us, and it, in that sense, being a personal blog about crafts.
Right.
It then did make that transition into being a blog about crafts, but not always child made. And that was difficult, because up until then I always felt the children should be driving it, and then suddenly it became this whole adult made versus child made. And I don't know if you're aware of the debate, but people often debate, is it all right for an adult to show you a child's craft that no child has ever made before? And once you kind of wrap your head around that, then it just kind of took off from there, if that makes sense. So it has changed, but just because my family life has changed. And I think this is what a lot of blogs do, because we change and our children change and our home changes. And so in some ways our story is still wrapped up in that, even though it's much more about me now than it is about the kids. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think it's different.
Right. Again, I think that when you are a blogger, your blog is part of your life.
Yeah.
I always say, like, I'm so curious in 5 years what our businesses will look like.
Oh, I would totally agree. I have no idea. Things change so quickly on the internet as well, don't they?
So could we talk about, you discovered social media pretty early, right? So you are very big, for example, on Facebook and YouTube and Pinterest, I'm assuming. So how did you then get on to social media early?
Okay, so I'm glad you think I got onto it early, because I remember when Facebook first came about, I was a bit sort of baffled by it. I have to confess, I didn't understand why you would have a page on Facebook. So in some ways I was slow to make that switch, and then when suddenly again the penny dropped of how you use social media, then when other things came along like Pinterest and Instagram, I was like, oh, actually, okay, you just need to go and run with it.
Okay.
And then also when you then started seeing the traffic coming from these social media platforms, you suddenly saw, well, I suddenly saw the value of social media. And now obviously I'm a massive social media convert. I totally get it. I totally get that you need to do it, and that it's that's such a huge traffic driver. But if I'm being really honest, it in the very, very early days, it took me a little while to kind of get it. But I was lucky enough that was a long time ago. I mean, it was 8 years ago. And I do agree that in some ways it's much harder now to grow your presence on, say, Facebook. But in other ways it's easier because there's more information out there and people understand sort of the tricks of the trade a bit better. So I guess, again, it's just different. But to anyone starting out, my tip would be to focus on one platform and really work that platform and not neglect the others completely. Right. I think you need to kind of dabble in all of them. But you can transfer a lot of it. So let's say Facebook is the main one. You do all your work for Facebook, whether it's video or crafts, and then you just crop and quickly edit it for Instagram or Pinterest. So I do think it's important not to neglect any platform completely, and you want your eggs in more than one basket. So, for example, I've had a problem with my Facebook page this week that people might be aware of, that Facebook is randomly kind of dinging pages and there's no reach. So for a week, I couldn't basically use it. And then luckily, because my Pinterest is in place and my SEO is in place and YouTube is in place, it was annoying, but it wasn't a disaster. So I think social media, it's so powerful and it is amazing and I love it. But at the same time, we don't own it. We have no control over it. And you have to have kind of your eggs, not all the eggs in one basket, I think is the sort of the bottom line.
So where would you say, what is your biggest traffic driver right now?
Okay, so right now it's Google and SEO. And that's because I put a lot of effort in the last year to tidy up my SEO strategy, so to speak.
Okay.
And I think it's really important to never forget Google.
Yes.
Because, again, this thing about using Facebook as an example, I had a week where I couldn't use it and, that's my traffic down. And at least I had Google ticking over and Pinterest ticking over.
Could we just say, how many followers do you have on Facebook?
Just short of 2.4 million.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And
it's frustrating, though, because 2 years ago when I had 400,000, you'd get the same sort of traffic. So it's a great number, but you have to take it with a pinch of salt and kind of remember how Facebook behaves, unfortunately.
Right. Facebook is like a fickle boyfriend.
Oh, yes.
But I feel like Facebook is becoming a worse and worse boyfriend.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we can't get rid of that boyfriend just yet. We have to keep at it.
I know we're in bad relationships. Yeah. Facebook never, and I've said this on my podcast, like Facebook isn't our sweet spot for Catch My Party. Pinterest is.
Yes.
And so I would meet bloggers like you who were getting enormous amounts of traffic from Facebook, and we tried everything. And yet there's certain blogs where it just is a perfect fit.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think I definitely can't knock anything else. I agree with you. Pinterest is so important and it's such a valuable platform. And to put it into context, I mean, my Pinterest following is much smaller. I think it's about 360,000. And I spend a lot less time on Pinterest. And it's driving the same amount of traffic, if not even a little bit more. But how I find Facebook quite useful, that I can get something going on Facebook and then it gets pinned a lot and then therefore Pinterest becomes stronger. So Pinterest is like that long midterm game, isn't it? So if you've got a new blog post out, Pinterest won't really pick it up for about 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, it will, but you won't necessarily see a huge difference in that particular blog post. Whilst Facebook is kind of now, and I think that's sort of quite the difference between the two for me. You kind of start off with Facebook now. It kind of gets things going. It goes on to Pinterest. Pinterest, it slowly kind of disperses amongst Pinterest. And then further down the line, it's Pinterest that's giving you the traffic and not Facebook. So it's kind of like a little life cycle of your blog post. And I think Pinterest is a really important part of that.
Now, where do Instagram and YouTube fit into that cycle?
Okay, so Instagram is one of those social media platforms that I'm kind of doing on the side. I kind of spend a bit more time on it now and again, and then I forget again a little bit about it. So at the moment for me, Instagram isn't massive. I know some people who really excel at it, but I feel the sort of return on time investment isn't good enough. But then maybe I haven't spent enough time, so it's chicken and egg. If you're not spending the time, you're not going to see the returns. I can't see it for me at the moment, Instagram being a massive traffic driver. You know, it's good for community. It's good for, like, I'm starting to use it to share my readers' crafts made. So when they make mine and they send me photos, I'm like, oh, let's share this on Instagram. And I quite enjoy that because it's a nice way to kind of give back. But that's sort of something I'm dabbling in. So Instagram to me is, I'm doing it, but it's not a massive focus. It does help with when you do sponsored work, but again, that's not my main focus. So it's not so important. YouTube is an interesting one for me in that I started it properly about 3 years ago because I wanted to diversify. I could see that I'd kind of plateaued a little bit in my blog and I wanted to get to a new audience. So YouTube for me is about talking to the children directly. So in YouTube, my main audience is sort of 8 to 12-year-olds, whilst Facebook is their parents. And for me, that's a really valuable tool because you're kind of getting different sort of feedback. You know, you get feedback from the kids as to what they find easy, what they find difficult. So I get really good feedback from that, what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy. So for example, 5 years ago, I wasn't doing any emoji crafts. Now I am. That's what the 8 and 10-year-olds like. And that's great as long as there's a balance. And what I love about YouTube as well is I feel I'm like on YouTube, I want to be the crafty auntie. So there's so many kids who love crafting, but they don't have time for school. Their parents don't like doing it. They have no one at home who does it with them, but they love it. And I kind of want to be their crafty auntie that they kind of go to for some ideas, and then they can kind of teach themselves a bit with my help. You know, so I kind of see that as my kind of YouTube persona.
That's terrific. Now, does YouTube then drive traffic for you? Does it drive brand work? Or is it just that you are the crafty auntie and you feel like these are your children?
The crafty auntie is a really big part of it, and sort of getting feedback and ideas, I guess you could argue. But also it informs my content for my blog. So my blog and YouTube are totally interwoven. So I'll put a video on YouTube and I'll do a blog post on it for my blog as well. So I guess it's just a different way of not driving traffic, but generating content. So you asked earlier on about how do you keep motivated or interested, or how do you keep coming up with ideas, and I think YouTube was just a fresh way of looking at content and craft ideas and that kind of thing. I do earn a little bit of ad revenue. I would say per 1,000 views it's significantly less than the blog. So I am earning, and what I get from YouTube is still worth it. Okay. But it's taken ages to get to that level, if that makes sense. So
absolutely.
That's a bit frustrating, and that can be very difficult for people just starting out on YouTube, that the monetary gain can be delayed. So so for me it's more about, and also actually what I liked about YouTube, we're thinking it out loud now, is, for example, origami, which I love. I didn't do a lot of origami on my blog previously because taking 50 steps, photos, and then editing them, so boring. A nice little video, it's really quick, really easy, and you've explained it. So it changed my content on my blog purely because I had a different way of sharing how to make something, and that's been quite fun because it's opened up kind of a new area of crafting, because I don't have to. It's not. Some things are really difficult to explain just using words and 3 pictures.
Totally.
And the video is a really nice way of being able to go, actually, just take a look. It's really easy.
So could we talk then about, because you are on a variety of platforms, you're making video, what does your schedule look like? And do you have a studio set up in your house?
So in terms of schedule, I do consider myself a full-time blogger. So this is my job. And so I do roughly work let's say from 8, depending on when the kids go to school, from 8 till about 3:30. I do have an hour's lunch break where I go for a walk, for exercise, Pilates or whatever. But on the whole, I do have sort of regular working hours every day. And in those regular working hours, for example, I will not do housework because I need to do my work, if that makes sense. So it's almost like a little rule. I don't go near the washing machine or anything like that. I'll do that when the kids are home, because A, they need to see that kind of stuff happens, and B, because these are my working hours. So I take my working hours quite seriously in that sense. And then outside of that, I'll probably still add another hour here or there where I do a bit extra. So I think if you add it up, it is pretty much a full-time job, but it's a full-time job that's really flexible. And for example, I can take holidays and obviously manage my time around that and things like that. So I find it really hard saying exactly how many hours a week I do, but it's not insignificant.
Right.
And in terms of setup, I have a little office, which is great. And then, to be honest, I have like a mini video setup, which is actually my bedroom, because that's got a really big window and it's got a desk. And although I have some lights as well, I kind of can leave it out. And that's the only place in the house where I've got the space and I can leave things out. And I think, again, being able to leave things out is quite key in terms of things like video production, probably photo production too, because you're not having to clear a space each time. You're not having to
pull out the equipment.
Exactly. And it makes a huge difference. And, I can go, right, I'm just going to do a quick video, and I'll go over and I'll just do a quick video, and then I'll just come back and carry on writing, because you can. Whereas before, I used to have to kind of wait and get things out. So I'm very lucky that my husband's very tolerant of the fact that our bedroom is also a mini studio.
That's great. So, okay, so how many what do you say to yourself this week? I am going to create 3 posts, 2 videos. How does that come to you?
Yeah, so I do have a schedule, and I think it's so because YouTube is like any social media, you're kind of rewarded for consistency. So I do have in my head I need to do 2 videos a week. Wow. For a year I did 3 a week, and then I cut back to 2, and that's been fine. So those 2 slots, so to speak, drive my production or productivity. And interestingly enough, I used to have 2 blog posts a week on Red Hat Art. That's sort of when I built up the blog, I always had this goal of 2 a week or more, obviously, but it had to be a minimum of 2 a week. And the same with YouTube, it has to be a minimum of 2 a week. And it does mean that some weeks I'll do something that isn't that good. And some people could argue, well, maybe it's better if you only put good content out. But other times, I'll argue that sometimes I'll put something up that I think isn't that good, and then it just takes off.
I know, that's the most fascinating part of the internet.
Yeah. So you know what? My 2 a week is really powerful, because I'll sit down and go, I haven't got a video, and I really need a video this week. I haven't got today's video yet, and then I'll go, right, I just got to do something, and then I'll just do something, and it'll be my best video all year. And then that will inform, I don't know, some other ideas, spin-off ideas off the back.
So are the videos and the blog posts related, or is this 2 separate crafts that are blog posts, 2 separate crafts that are videos?
No, they will always be related. So the blog actually now has about 4 posts a week, because I have my 2 on YouTube, and I'll put most of my YouTube videos on the blog. Not all of them, but most of them. And then on top of that, I'm continuously working on SEO for Red Hat Art. So, for example, I'll have those 2 YouTube videos and then a blog post to go with them. So, I don't know, mermaid craft. So they'll be on the YouTube channel and on my blog. But then I'll also maybe work on a roundup, kind of rehashing old content in new ways. Or I might republish an old blog post. Or I might have somebody who really wants to do me a guest post. I'm like, yeah, great, love your guest post, brilliant, I'll have that up. So I will. Sometimes I'll even have 5 posts go out on Red Hat Art in a week, which I personally find I'm quite overwhelmed by it, because I used to only do 2, and I'm like going, it's so much content, I can't keep up. Right. But there's always so much to do, and there's almost so much that you kind of want to grab and go for and do the next thing, and so it's a lot of
amazing. Now, how do you then edit the video and then repurpose all this content for social? What's your process?
So with the video, I film it, I film the make, and then I go back and do a little introduction with the finished product, and then I'll take the sort of camera stand down, and then I'll do photos for both the YouTube thumbnail, but also with Pinterest and the blog in mind. So the process involves both at the end. So it starts off with the video, but there's then the photos that also need to be done for Pinterest and for the blog. And then also I've recently had an app. I can't tell you the name right now because I hid my phone so it doesn't ring during the podcast. But I've got an app where you can then do screenshots of the video quite quickly. Okay. And I'll use the screenshots just to add a couple of steps into the blog post. But the video is still the key way to explain a make on the blog. But I'll also have a written description plus some steps. So it's all interwoven, and the blog posts could mostly be standalone without a video as well now. For a while, you really needed the video to be able to do the craft, whilst now I'm trying to kind of come up with an in-between, because some people are offline and they want to make something. So I do create a craft now with both in mind, what YouTube needs and what Pinterest and the blog needs. And it took me a while to kind of come to that. I think I was YouTubing for a good year and totally neglecting Pinterest, and that wasn't good. Right. So, yeah, basically. And then when I'm working on my SEO, I'll suddenly go, oh, I have a gap. Toilet rolls are really important for my blog. Right, I need to create some toilet roll crafts, and then I'll try and come up with something that's suitable for my YouTube viewers and my blog. So they do definitely work together now, which they didn't before. They were a bit more separate. But SEO will drive YouTube. YouTube will drive the blog because I need a blog post. And then as long as I remember to then have some photos for Pinterest, I'll occasionally take some square ones for Instagram, but it's not as important. I can just crop the other ones. But yeah, that's how I'm working at the moment. I'm thinking, maybe I should do a square video and stick that on Instagram. But I'm not there yet.
I mean, your process is like amazing. And do you have help? Do you have people who work with you, who are editing your videos or doing social media for you?
I have help in as far as that fellow bloggers help me with my Facebook page, in that I've given them like the 5 o'clock time slot or the 6 o'clock time slot, and they'll fill that for me every day. Okay. But I would say I'm still doing half of Facebook, and they're kind of doing the other half for me. But because I'm on Facebook, I'm posting like 12 to 20 posts a day. I kind of need that help, if that makes, because I'm still doing 8 or whatever myself. So to be honest, at the moment I'm still doing it myself. I'm trying to be cleverer and work smarter, not harder. Yes. And that's my big downfall right now, which I think a lot of us might be able to relate to. I'm not sure. Yes. But I do it all myself, and I know I shouldn't. But I'm very particular about my Pinterest images. I'm very particular. It's really hard to let go.
It is really hard to let go, but I have to tell you, in my own experience, I've had to start letting go. I've had to start hiring people.
Yes, yes.
And it is ultimately a positive thing.
Yes, yes. I think the problem is that I feel that I'm coping. And because I feel that I'm coping, I find it hard to let go. I think if I felt overwhelmed. Right. But then when you're overwhelmed, you then don't have the time to hire someone. I mean, I also feel, I think what I need to do is I need to hire somebody young and train them up and have them here every day. I think that's my problem, is that I've dabbled in VAs, and I've dabbled in people writing, a roundup for me, and they've all been really good. And, so there's it's not that they haven't been effective or anything. It's just more a case of, I think by giving them just a little bit here and there, they can never really work themselves into my way of thinking. And I do think if you're going to outsource, you kind of have to really be committed to it. So the dabbling hasn't helped me, because it's kind of put me off, rather than just going, actually, you know what, I need to put an ad in the paper and go for hire and get somebody on board properly.
Right. Well, and the training somebody to think like you takes a while.
Yes, yes. And then there's that nervousness that you spend 6 months training them up and then they leave.
Yes. But I have found that I have an assistant, for example, and we actually now can kind of finish each other's sentences.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And by the way, she lives in Portugal, and we are just on Slack all
So you
day.
oh right, so you work remotely. That's amazing. Love
Yeah.
that.
And then, like, because on Slack, for example, we can call each other. So
Right.
we're always, when we talk, we're like, I can't believe you're not down the block.
Wow.
I
Okay.
can't
Right.
believe you're halfway around the world.
How did you find her?
We had done work, she had done work for Catch My Party. And we became friends. Like, she was pregnant and
Yeah.
she was having a baby, and so we just stayed. And now that baby is, I think, 5.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
we just stayed in
Okay.
touch, and we had done, she's a designer. She had created some printables for us. And I just loved working with her. So one day I said, hey, she said she was looking to do more. I said,
Right.
hey, do you want to work with me?
Brilliant. Brilliant. I love it. Right. I
So
need to.
again, it was organic, and it's like she is like half my brain.
Brilliant. My problem is that I know some really good bloggers that I would love to work with more, but they've got their own blogs and they're so busy with their
Yes.
own stuff. And that's my problem, because I know some amazing people who I'd love to hand over some work to. But and I know they would take some of it off me, but at the
Right.
end of the day, they've got their own websites and their own projects. And that's the thing, it's finding that sort of external person to it who doesn't necessarily want to do their own, but would
Right.
just love being involved. In fact, that's given me an idea. So I'm glad we've had this conversation.
I'm glad. I have to say, the letting go is difficult at first,
Yes,
but then when you see how much more you can do,
yes, yes, yes,
or here's the other piece: you've got a thought partner.
yes.
So
That's
when she comes to me and goes, I think we need a blog post about this, and I'm like, oh my God, that's brilliant.
yeah, that's a very, very valid point as well. I agree. It's amazing.
So you're not just up in your own head.
Yeah, and you
And
do have somebody to discuss latest issues and kind of bloggy issue, problems, because there's always little things going on that kind of the real life people don't necessarily get because they just don't.
exactly. And also, for example, when we came back from our conference, you and me, and we learned new techniques for Pinterest,
Yes,
immediately I'm like talking to her and going, here's what I've learned, and here's how we should, it gives me all these ideas, but like it's hard then for me to execute, but to say, let's go this way. And she'll be like, great, and then adds her spin to it. So it does, like, if you find the right person, that 1 + 1 is more than 2.
yes, I agree.
Now it can be that 1 + 1 is like 1.5.
Yeah, yeah. But then you
And
haven't
so
picked the right person, I guess, right?
exactly. So it is all about finding the right person.
Yeah, I agree. I
So,
agree.
okay, so when we were talking about kind of all these social networks that you're on and stuff, how then, so we were going through your traffic sources, and you were saying that SEO is first,
Yes.
and then followed by, you said Facebook and Pinterest are somewhat even, although Pinterest
Yes.
might be a little bit higher.
Yeah, yeah. They kind of level peg each other, and then I think overall Pinterest. I mean, I haven't looked at it recently, and I haven't looked at the full year, but Pinterest probably will do better over time, or might have a, like, if you have a Pinterest viral, as you know, that's just
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Whilst if you have a Facebook viral, you'll get nice traffic from it, but not in the same way as a Pinterest viral.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
So if I have a post, let's say, being reshared 40,000 times on Facebook, which I hasten to add is not often,
Okay,
I'll get some lovely traffic from it. But because people on Facebook like to consume on Facebook, it can be
right.
quite hard to get them to click through. I mean, they do click through statistically speaking, but I suspect, I'm just making this up, that only 30% of Facebook users click through,
Right.
whilst probably 90% of Pinterest users click through. Because
Exactly.
Pinterest users are there. I mean, yes, they're browsing a lot and they're getting visual ideas and visual inspiration. Obviously, that's what Pinterest is. But I think Pinterest people do want to click through and get the full information, whilst on Facebook, it's almost like, the more they can consume on Facebook itself,
Yes.
the better. So 40,000 pins would get me much more traffic than 40,000 shares on Facebook.
Yes. Now, does YouTube drive traffic?
A little bit, not hugely. Mainly, the main traffic I get from YouTube is if I have a printable to go with a certain craft.
Right.
And because it's my kids there, I do put printables on there when I say my kids, but I don't put too many because I feel it's a little bit unfair because they don't all have access to printers.
Right.
So I try not to overload my YouTube channel with the printables as such. I do try and do a lot of stuff where they can learn how to make it literally from scratch. And sometimes I'll go, here's how you make it from scratch. If you find it easier, here's a printable. So you could argue there's choice. But yeah, I get a little bit of traffic from YouTube, but not tons.
So then my next question is, how do you monetize?
But for both the blog and YouTube, it is mainly ad revenue. And
Okay.
I have to say, I love ad revenue. I think it's brilliant because it feels like this passive income. And I have no guilt about ads because I feel I'm offering everything for free. And if you just have to look at an ad whilst you're kind of passing,
Right.
that's fine. As far as I'm concerned, it's like, I don't want ads to be intrusive, obviously, but equally, I think they're fine. So ad revenue is the big thing. And we talked about AdThrive earlier on. I mean, that for me was a game changer. When I wrote Google AdSense, it doesn't even compare. AdThrive just transformed my revenue income. It's amazing. So thank you, AdThrive.
Thank you, AdThrive.
Thank you, AdThrive. We love you. And YouTube is similar in that sense that it's actually Google AdSense on YouTube. But the revenue is much lower, and I have a lot of Indian viewers on YouTube. And again, as with AdThrive, I'm sure certain countries are more profitable than others, and India, for example, is less profitable. But I still like it as a place. I mean, I enjoy those viewers, so there's nothing wrong with that. But it just means that the revenue is lower. And I do a little bit of sponsored work, so working with brands and stuff. But I wouldn't say. It's not my main driver. I do a little bit of affiliate marketing, but again, it's not something I'm not very good at sales. I'm not a big salesperson. I do feel I need to change that a bit because I do have a very great, really strong audience, and there's some really great products out there, and I probably should make more about bringing those two together. But at the moment, it's ad revenue, and that's basically means I just totally focus on sort of page views statistically.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, what do you do then? How do you deal with, you wake up in the morning and Facebook has somehow changed its algorithm, and thank goodness this most recent one was only like it affected your traffic for about a week.
Yeah.
But how do you not internalize that and go, oh, or yay? Because I struggle with that.
Yeah, it is really hard. I'm in inverted commas lucky that that Facebook has been tinkering with the algorithms, I think since 2014 or something.
Probably.
So the heyday of Facebook has long been over, and they've been making it, as far as I'm concerned, more and more difficult for years now. So I think if I'd gone from my heyday of 2014 to a week of no traffic, it would have been devastating.
Yes.
Because Facebook had been turning off the tap bit by bit.
Yes.
It was, obviously disappointing, but I'd heard about this. It's a 7-day problem. It was literally to the minute. Once those 7 days were over, the page was back. And because I knew about other pages this has happened to, it was a real shock for them when it happened to them in January and when it happened to them in March. And I was like really sad for them. When it came to me, I was just like, you know what? It was bound to happen at some point. It's happened now. Let's pray it's the 7-day bug.
Okay.
Just move on. And I was lucky, touch wood. I mean, it only got lifted this morning, so we're still early days. And I think because Facebook's been a difficult platform to work on for a while, you just have to let go. That's the only way I can describe it, and it's a love-hate relationship. Facebook. I'm being quite honestly, it's a very frustrating platform. But what can you do? We don't pay for it. We don't own it. They do.
Right. Yes, it's a good lesson. I think that traffic in general, or like I will go for weeks and not check our Google Analytics.
Yeah.
Because I find it's really hard for me to separate my emotions or my fears from my Google
right.
Analytics.
Yes, you're quite right. Especially in the summer months, I'll avoid looking at it, because in the summer month, which is my quiet period, I don't know if it's the same for you. It can be depressing, but I think also with the having been blogging for about 8-9 years, I've also learned that it is seasonal. So
Yes.
the highs of Christmas is not the norm. They are
Yes.
genuinely a high. And if I assume that my summer traffic is normal and everything else is a bonus, it's much easier to deal with.
Yeah, so in fact, for us, weirdly, our traffic is like the highest for Halloween,
Oh
and
yes,
then
yeah.
it dies for us between Thanksgiving and
Oh
Christmas,
wow, really
which is
interesting.
super weird, but it happens every year. And every year, I fear that we're going out of business.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because it's when you see that drop, you're like, oh, and then it somehow kind of the following year comes again
It
and has
comes back.
comes
Oh,
again.
by the
Ah,
way,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. I remember this September thinking, yeah, in September everything's good again, and then the first week in September it was still a bit low, and then in the second week I was like, oh, panic, and then you know what? By the end of September we were off again. Um,
Exactly.
but I know what you mean, because during my peak seasons, I find that probably more stressful than the low seasons now, because I've kind of made my peace with the low season.
Right?
And the peak season is when I'm like, yeah, I need to make my money now. uh,
Yes. But there is something about letting go. There
yes.
is something about trusting, like, okay, maybe our business is over, but we're smart. We could come up with something else.
Yes, I think you're right. And I think also with and again, I'm not sure how it works for you with Catch My Party, but I know, for example, with Red Set Art, certainly for the next year or two, unless something really awful happens, I will have a base income. So
Yes.
I know I'll get at least, let's say, a third of what I'm earning right now. And if I
Yes.
put that as a number, I'm like, you know what? That's still, I'm lucky. The blog is at the size now where that is still a good number, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
I think you just have to, and I do say to my husband constantly, we just need to make hay whilst the sun shines, save as much as possible, put as much as possible aside, and then what will be will be. And obviously, I'd like to keep it going for as long as possible, but who knows?
Who knows? I
Who knows?
know.
Yeah.
I know. I know.
Wait, one
It's
pass.
yeah, well, it's one of those things about being an entrepreneur is you don't know.
No, and I do think it's important to constantly add strings to your bow. So YouTube was an example where 3 years ago I wasn't really doing it, and now I am. In terms of looking forward, I'm considering. I haven't got any concrete plans, but you're looking at what products you could have, maybe physical ones or apps, or there's a lot of ebooks around. So you do have to kind of just keep adding strings to your bow, and then as one drops off, the next one hopefully takes its place, and you move on.
Exactly. And that was our story with Milo Tree. We built
Yes.
Milo Tree for ourselves. We didn't think this would be a business. Then all of a sudden it really worked. And we thought, oh, wow, this. And then we had that moment of like, can we be in the app business? And like,
Yes.
this is a whole different market. We're selling to bloggers and entrepreneurs, whereas Catch My Party is all about moms throwing parties. Like, how do we make sense of that? And then
Exactly.
we're like, well, why not?
I mean, it's genius. I love Milo Tree as an example. I think it's a really good example where you can kind of just think, okay, how, yeah, like you say, you created it for a need you had yourself, and then it created a new income stream or business for you. So, it's looking at things like that. So I'm always keeping my ear open for blogger problems and blogger issues. I've got a friend who's an amazing developer, and I know he's really interested in developing something. It's just figuring out what that something is.
Exactly. And it's just kind of like tapping into your, like, for me, it is about questioning your assumptions and saying, well, like, could I do this? Oh,
Mhm.
maybe I could. Maybe I should try that. And kind of following a couple of your almost crazy idea, not you, one's crazy ideas, and
Yes.
seeing like, could that pay off? Could this
I,
be something? I
I,
don't know.
yeah, and I think if you don't try, you'll never know. And
Yes.
I think that's the main thing. So, for example, this friend I just mentioned about the the developer, I said to him, look, can we create a rival newsletter platform? And then we had a big chat about it, and we decided we wouldn't bother because ConvertKit is just amazing, and competing purely on price isn't worth it. But then he said, yeah, but what else is there? So, it opens a conversation. So even though, okay, maybe it's a bad example because I said I haven't actually tried a newsletter platform because that's a huge project, but I initiated the background conversation and talked to an expert in the, so it's exploring different options, and again, it might lead you to something else, and I think it will, because he said, but you know what, Maggy, I don't think the newsletter is a brilliant idea just because competing on price isn't a good enough reason, but I think there's something we can do together. I know there is. We just have to come up with ideas. So now I've got that sort of strength of knowledge that there's someone there who believes in everything I'm doing and really wants to work with me. He said that. I said, I really want to do a project with you. We just need to figure out what that project is. And I haven't. That was a month ago. No, it's 2 weeks ago we spoke. So, it's that sort of thing, you just kind of go. So if you have any problems, please tell me.
Exactly. Email Maggy.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. So Maggy, what are you most excited about that you're working on or that you're planning to work on?
Well, it's a tricky one for me because back to this thing about having an assistant or somebody to work with is I'm so lost in the day job. I don't often take enough time step back to go, okay, what's the bigger picture? And I think I sometimes use that as an excuse. I love the term constructive procrastination.
I've never heard that. I love it.
Yeah, you're basically very, very, very productive, but you're not doing the things you should be doing. So back to me churning out 5 blog posts a week. I mean, that's really productive, but I'm still procrastinating on the bigger picture. So that's my challenge. I mean, one thing I am looking at is obviously making more of my newsletter. Again, this is from the AdThrive conference. And again, Facebook having just given me that week off, so to speak, kind of enforces that. So I'm much more positive about my newsletter, for example, and making more of it and using it as more of a tool to connect with people, encouraging them to, do things like send me their photos of stuff they've made themselves. But I have to confess, beyond that, it's kind of carrying on what I'm doing, and maybe coming up with that killer idea that my developer friend and I can work on. I'm quite confident we will think of something. The question is just when.
Right. Now, if you, given that you've been at this for a while, what advice would you have for somebody who is just starting out, who doesn't have, where today it's not as easy to grow your Facebook followers, or something like that, but you should use Milo Tree because it will help. But like, what would you say to somebody who comes to you and says, I want to do what you do, or I want to start something on my own?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I'm not sure how many points I'm going to make, but let's see. The first one is just believe in yourself. I know it's such a cheesy thing to say, such a cliche thing to say, but it's so important. I mean, I have a lot of teachers who read my blog, and I know they love it. In fact, I got an email today from a teacher at school asking me to come in and make her wedding bouquet with her class. I mean, it's such a sweet thing. So I know, and then I had coincidentally, the deputy head, also from the same school, emailed me today saying, can you come in for our health and wellbeing day and run some craft sessions? So I know I've got teachers who've totally got my back. But also my early days of blogging, I had teachers or teacher friends who kind of questioned my ability to teach. And it kind of then made me unconfident about certain things I was doing at the time, things that I was really enjoying doing. So I had like a kids get arty series, looking at Goldsworthy or Andy Warhol or whatever. And you know what? I think if you believe, if you're passionate about what you're doing and you believe in yourself, what you produce will be amazing. So I think that's one big thing is don't let other people make you feel that you can't for whatever reason, whether you're doing a cooking blog and you're like, but I'm not a chef, I've never trained, or, so it doesn't matter, because if you're passionate about it, you'll be doing a good job, whatever you're doing. So I think that's the first thing is to really not let other people question you in that sense. And then the other things are more pragmatic. I think my blog, right from the word go, SEO, I didn't understand it early on. I had some really weird blog titles like Red Ted gets stuck in instead of describing what the craft is about.
Right.
Really nice art titles or fun titles, but they mean nothing in SEO terms.
Right.
I do think paying attention to SEO from as early on as possible is important. You don't have to necessarily get bogged down in the detail of SEO. You can learn about SEO as you go along.
Right.
But if you have basic structures in place, like a good blog post title.
Right. And wait, I just want to stop for 1 second. I think what you're saying is to not have some like "this is awesome" post title, but to say, how to make a wedding bouquet with tissue paper flowers.
Exactly. So it's just so not go for the sort of nice journalistic titles, but go for informative titles. So whether it's SEO or Pinterest or Facebook, if it's informative, people know what it's about.
Right.
So you've got to remember that your blog is a bit like a magazine, and you're kind of on a shelf in a newsagent, and you're fighting for people to pick up your magazine and look inside your magazine and find out more. And if the cover image is confusing and the cover title is confusing, they won't necessarily pick it up. Not because it's not nice, just because they won't get it. So I think it's really tricky to a newer blogger to say you need to do this, this, and this, because it can be really overwhelming. So I do think just get started. But my advice to people is, consider the basics of SEO, which are things like a good title. Consider your images. Don't put things on your blog that are 2 megabytes in size. Try and keep them small.
Right.
And then consider.
Wait, and that's so that your blog loads quickly, because speed matters. People will click away if they're waiting for your images to load.
Exactly. So it's the quick loading, but also you're then carrying around a lot of weight that you're paying for, because it's more bandwidth being eaten up by that visitor, because it's taking that long for that image to load. So smaller, not small, they don't have to be physically smaller, but the file sizes need to be smaller. And then, without going into too much techno speak, but that's that whole thing about being conscious that there is social media out there, and that Pinterest, for example, does prefer portrait, and that Instagram, for example, does prefer square, and that Facebook is somewhere in between. I prefer landscape from a editing visual point of view, because I find then it doesn't take up your whole page in terms of image. So you kind of need to have a mix of images to kind of address different needs of the audience finding you in different ways. So you can take the same picture but have it landscape and portrait, and that usually will do the trick to begin with. And then as your blog grows and you learn more, you can you get better at your photography, and you get better at your pinnable images, and you get better at. But I think to avoid overwhelming people with information, just have one of each. A landscape one, a portrait one. Watermark everything. Everything. Things get lost on the internet.
And wait, can you explain what a watermark is?
So if you have it's mainly for your photos. So all my images, I have a very lightly written red Ted art in the corner, so that places like Pinterest, often images will get mispinned, so to speak, and the link will get broken. So there's a lovely image of your craft, and when people click on it, it just doesn't come through to you. So if you've got a watermark on it, at least they can type into Google, it says red Ted art there, red Ted art, and there's a giraffe. So I'll just put red Ted art giraffe, and then with a bit of luck, they'll find that craft again. Obviously, there's also a little bit about online theft, but that's sort of, that's another issue. But just from a simplistic point of view, I always like to call it that images get lost. And if you watermark, you provide a trail back to your website, and people are more likely to come back to you.
Oh, well, Maggy, this has been so delightful. I so enjoy, always chatting when we chat. I learn from you. I love your honesty. So how can people reach out to you?
Anyway, they can email me, so info@redtedart.com, or they'll find me on social media, so Facebook. But in groups, usually I think we're more active. So I don't know if people are aware of things like the Kid Blogger Network or Blogging Buddies. So I think, again, new bloggers should try and join blogging groups. It's a really great way.
And these are on Facebook. On
Facebook, yeah. So there's some really good blogging groups that or if you've got a friend that blogs, ask them about what groups they're in, and I think that's a really good, helpful way. But if you're trying to get to me personally, so info@redtedart.com, or leaving me a comment on Instagram. Oddly, considering I've said it's not that important a platform, I usually see all the comments on Instagram, whilst I don't see any comments on Facebook because it's so busy on Facebook. So yeah, I think that's the best
Awesome.
way. But thank
Well,
you as well for having me. It's been really nice to chat to you. So I feel like you might be so far away from me, but we're friends, and it's lovely.
are you trying to grow your social media followers and email subscribers? Well, if you've got 2 minutes, I've got a product for you. It's Milo Tree. Milo Tree is a smart pop-up slider that you install on your site, and it pops up and asks your visitors to follow you on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Pinterest, or subscribe to your list. It takes 2 minutes to install. We offer a WordPress plugin or a simple line of code, and it's Google friendly on mobile and desktop. So we know where your traffic is coming from. We show a Google friendly pop-up on desktop and a smaller Google friendly pop-up on mobile. Check it out. Sign up today and get your first 30 days free.